Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the final score. Today, we have five depressed Giants fans that are going to talk about the upcoming season, big offseason for Joe Shane, Brian Dable, and company. We're going to take a look at all the rumors going on, what they're going to do at quarterback, the draft, free agency, and just get a gauge for how us Giants fans are feeling. So, looking forward to getting into it. We have the whole crew here, plus one. Paul King is joining us as our longest tenured Giants fan. And as that, Paul, I thought we'd start with you and just talk to me about how you're feeling heading into the offseason with keeping Shane, keeping Dable, and how you think we're going to end up looking.
Uh, yeah, as everybody was calling for everybody's heads at the end of the season, I don't know how Joe Shane still has a job. Like, if everything that happened with Saquon and the success that he had, and John Mara calling him out on Hard Knocks, and all of these things, that he still is employed as a GM. But I think that's strictly because Maras have failed with three different regimes since Coughlin left, and they're trying to give it that one more year. And I didn't think there was a lot out there for GMs and head coaches. Ben Johnson was somebody that was big, but he was going to pick where he went. So I don't mind one more year to give them a full 3 years, see what happens.
Haven't they had a well, yeah, I guess they have had a full 3 years though.
Are they? This is the third year they're going
This
in.
is this
Fourth
is
year.
year four.
This
Yeah.
is year four.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Year one was the amazing year where they
Oh,
made
the successful year, right?
Yeah.
And then year two. Yeah, you're right. All right.
and then
So
they fell off
I
a cliff, and it's
I
been two
think
years of regular old
to
Giants misery since.
to barge in here, I think if you look at Shane and Dayball, the first year was the best year in a long time. Dayball was genuinely coaching great, and they were basically playing on house money. Um, that being said, I don't really think Sheen has made good moves much at all in his tenure. I understand the reasoning at the time of
Some.
signing Daniel Jones, but I think if you look at how the Saquon Barkley situation was handled this past year, that should cost so many jobs. That was horrible. I mean, the guy just won a Super Bowl as arguably the most valuable player on that team, and they let him walk.
Yeah, but I get it. I mean,
And they haven't addressed really
the
any
Saquon
like the
thing,
offensive line is still not good.
the offensive line was good until Andrew Thomas got hurt last year. It was Jermaine Illuminor was a genuinely very good signing. And look,
yep.
I'm not even a Joe Shane fan, but speaking honestly, Jermaine Illuminor was a really good signing. Runyon was solid. They need to shore up right guard, and um, John Michael Schmitz is kind of mid,
But
not very good. But
I mean,
Look,
I
in GM, you have
understand.
hits and misses, right?
He's
And I
had a
mean, but Evan Neal and Thibodeau in the top seven is
big
two
not so
misses.
good.
massive
Yeah,
misses.
can't have that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then the same year they paid Daniel Jones. Good thing we did that, right?
Yeah,
I
no.
think I think the worst part about I understand why you paid Daniel Jones at the time you did. I understand that. But then you look at it 2 years from now, they chose to pay him over Saquon Barkley. They let Saquon Barkley walk and then they cut Daniel Jones.
So the Saquon thing is the only thing that I think I could kind of stand with Shane on there is like obviously it blows up in your face. Eagles win the Super Bowl. Saquon's rushing for almost 2,000 yards. It blows up in your face. That being said, we did have Saquon for a good amount of time, and he could have never done what he did
Oh,
6 years, right?
absolutely.
without the Eagles. We had him for 6 years, so I think it looks worse than it is because paying a running back when we have nothing else really. It's not like if we kept Saquon, we would have been in the NFC East Championship or the NFC Championship this year. We're still a poor team. It's just that the Eagles are so good, then you
Look,
add a
Yeah.
talent.
let's
No,
let's look at
it was
this.
just a huge win for the Eagles. I mean, I agree. Tyrone Tracy's a win for the Giants. That was a good draft
Yeah.
pick.
So
Yeah,
let's
he's
take out
excellent.
Saquon. Let's take out Saquon. Let's look at some of these picks in the last few years, right? Kayvon Thibodeau, miss. Evan Neal,
Mhm.
miss. Wandale Robinson, underutilized.
I think he's a good
Joshua
pick though.
Azidu, Cordell Flott, Bellinger. Michael McFadden's good. That was a good find.
He's basically had two bad drafts and one good one. Last year's
Hyatt,
draft was
underused.
obviously
Eric
great.
Gray. doesn't really do much. Nobody else after that. Deontay Banks, he's okay. John Michael Schmitz, he's okay. You look at this year, Malik Neighbors is great. Everybody else,
Drew Phillips, really
Tyrone
good.
Tracy.
Phillips is good.
Tyrone
Forget
Tracy,
Drew
really
Phillips,
good.
Tracy. He had a better draft this
Tyler
year.
Newbin, really good. This year's draft class
So
was
this year
good.
was good, but look at
But it was
22
the
and
first one.
23. That was
I
dreadful.
don't know. I guess I wish I was at a job where my last 2 years could have been that bad, and I get brought back for
Yeah.
one more shot, and maybe that's like I got away with one, and maybe he has a great draft, and they turn everything around because you do have to give things time. Back before in my day, in the past, people were given 3, 4, 5 years to try to build a team. That was the thought that it was going to take that much
Yeah, and
time
those
to turn
arguments
things
can
around.
be made. I mean, many like if
But then you look at the success of the Commanders because of Jayden Daniels, and you're like, I want it now.
I think you can look at coaching records of other historical coaches. You look at Bill Belichick, you look at like Pete Carroll and a lot of other really famous coaches and legendary coaches, and they struggled a lot at first. GMs who maybe took some time to get it together. So I can understand that aspect, but I do think last year was one of, and you could say, there's so many years I could say this, but last year was one of the worst years in Giants.
3 years ago, Dable was king of New York. He was going to Rangers games, getting standing ovations, wearing Rangers jerseys.
And he lost the locker room last year. And
Yeah.
I do like Dable though overall as a coach. I think if, especially with the opportunity we have this year to pick up a good quarterback, whether that be Ward or Sanders, I think he has a good eye for quarterbacks. I think he can develop a good quarterback. So I don't hate
Definitely think so.
keeping Dable. So granted, he's just had Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy
I
DeVito
think
to work
I'm
with. So
more on the side of keeping Dable than I am of.
But they were a package deal.
yeah,
And you
Yeah,
said
you're
it
not
was
firing
supposed
the
to go
GM and keeping the coach most likely.
I
But
also think some of Dable's coordinators have been questionable.
I would
I
say
think
all of them have been
everything about
I
questionable.
don't love his
At
new
best.
defensive
Patrick Graham ended
coordinator.
up being pretty decent, didn't he? Like wherever I forget where he is now, but he seems like he's been okay.
Who was?
Patrick Graham, was he under Dayball or was that before? No,
That was
no, because that was Wink
That
Martin.
was
Yeah,
before. Yeah.
yeah,
But
talking about Joe Judge era.
yeah.
safe to
Great
say,
coaches.
heading into the offseason, we are feeling supremely confident in Joe Shane to lead us to the promised land. One thing I wanted to address, so we're going to have 3 big topics that we're going to talk about in regards to the offseason. First and foremost is going to be what to do at quarterback, because obviously none of it matters if you don't get the quarterback right. So to start, there's been a really interesting rumor that came up. Couldn't have seen it coming, but Matthew Stafford, there's some friction there with the Rams, unsure about his contract status, what's going on. Could they look to trade him? Giants have been linked. So let's start there. Jay, why don't we start with you?
I want to jump in here really quick. I have one question. Are we going to win a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford?
No,
You're not going to trade the number 3 pick where you have a chance to redirect your franchise for maybe 15 years for a guy who has
15 years.
maybe a few years
I
left.
don't think 3 was ever going to be on the table in any
Well, yeah, if
Stafford
they
deal.
trade the number 3 pick, I'm leaving the Giants.
Yeah, that's
franchise.
It got thrown out there recently that they were looking for it. I did see an article that said they were looking for the 3.
I'm looking for $1 million, but
Now they have the 26th. So what if you swapped?
3's too
Still
valuable.
Crucial.
We're not going
If
to
you
win a
look at
Super Bowl
if you
in-
look
in
at
2
other
years.
if you look at other quarterbacks, just to get an idea of what the
And Stafford,
what a reasonable compensation would be. Matt Ryan got traded to the Colts when he was 37. He was he was more past his prime than Stafford is, but he got traded for a third. Aaron Rodgers, when he got traded to the Jets,
Good.
at the time, no one considered him washed yet. He was 1 year removed from an MVP season. He got traded for a second rounder, I think, and a conditional pick. It was like a third that could become a second. So I think that's probably what it's going to be. 2 seconds, maybe a second and a conditional third. Definitely not 3.
I'll be honest.
3 is
though.
not even close to on the table.
The thing about all this to me is take picks out of the equation and other things. what is exactly in it for Matt Stafford and what is exactly in it for the Giants? I don't
I
understand.
can't answer what's in it for Stafford, but I could see what's in it for the Giants.
But if you give up valuable picks for 1 to 2 years,
It's not going to be. It's not.
I'd rather
Let's
just take
forget
a
about
young
what we give up. Let's
quarterback.
say Matthew Stafford's the quarterback of the New York Giants next year.
Mhm.
Immediately, Malik Neighbors is 1,500 yards and close to 20 touchdowns.
We're not winning a Super
Immediately.
Bowl with that, though. The Rams
And if we have
roster is better
Shador
than-
or we have Cam Ward, it's not going to be the same result for Malik. He's going to be a megastar. 2 years ago, Stafford took Cup and
Robert Woods.
the other guy, Puka,
Yeah,
right?
Puka.
And made them absolute studs. He can still sling it. He knows how to run the offense. They would look pristine.
We'll be
But
competitive
like-
at least.
But I'm
But
kind
I
of with,
think-
kind of with
but I-
Dylan
I-
on the.
I would like him with a second round quarterback that could sit for 2 years and everything turns around.
Like,
Let's
is there a certain quarterback that you would like Jackson Dart or Jalen Milrow?
Well,
Both of those.
that's
I
a different
really,
discussion.
really like Dart. You want to move this forward, Anthony? I know you were
Yeah,
talking
that's
about a different
that's
spot.
we can get into that in the draft. I want to kind
Yeah.
of focus right now on the Stafford thing because
But my idea
it could
is
branch off.
Stafford
But
with a 2-year quarterback to sit and learn.
yeah, Jay, why don't you look like you're ready to interject on Stafford here.
All I was gonna say is the Rams are better than the Giants right now. So Stafford comes to the Giants. We're still not making the NFC Championship. I don't think we're making the Super Bowl. I would rather hope and pray that either Shador or Cam Ward is going to be like a CJ Stroud or a Jayden Daniels and change the culture immediately.
Here's
That's the route you want to go with a failing franchise.
I think the Giants.
Here's the thing
are
about
looking
that,
more
though.
at the 2 to 3 years from now. I don't think this is a team that can be switched overnight.
But okay, fair. But here's the thing about that you have to realize with Stafford. It's not obviously the goal is to win a Super Bowl, but when you are a franchise that has been dysfunctional for years, you can't look at it and say, if this doesn't make us a Super Bowl contender, we're not going to do it.
But that's
Because
not even.
you also have a core of, if you think about, you have a core of guys in Malik Neighbors, Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns. If you have, you have a core of guys here that you kind of have a window where you can build a team that's going to be competitive. Not saying they're going to be a Super Bowl team, but look, the Commanders did it. I mean,
Right.
Obviously they did it differently. They did it with the rookie, but
Pause right there for a minute. Think about that with the Commanders.
Rookie compared.
Look at Commanders roster and the Giants roster. In many ways, the Giants roster is better. That roster this year with Jayden Daniels was a garbage roster, 55% of it. And look what they did. Yes, they've got a few key skill players. Our skill players are better.
But that's
Not
what
to
I feel like.
mention that-
But that's what I feel like is the value of a rookie quarterback that can come in and change the entire culture that I don't think a veteran quarterback could come in and do.
I actually disagree there. I think that it's more likely that a veteran's going to change the culture because the hit rate on rookie quarterbacks is really low. And for every Jayden Daniels, CJ Stroud, you have far more examples of guys that either come in and take time, they come in and are just busts outright. I mean, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance were picked at 2 and 3, Mitch Trubisky.
I mean, I would definitely say that. I mean, if the Commanders had Matthew Stafford, though, they're not even close to where they were.
You're right, Jayden.
But that's a totally different team.
They hit lightning. And Texans
They also
hit lightning with
everything.
Stroud.
Keep in mind, they also had a new coach, new management.
I just feel
so
like
I think that the Jayden. Look, my point in bringing up the Jayden Daniels comp is not that it's a perfect one-to-one comparison, but if you get a guy like Stafford in the building, you get competent quarterback play for the first time in years. You have a guy in Malik Neighbors and your other stars that are now happy to be there because you are creating a winning environment. And Stafford is a floor raiser. You put Stafford on last year's team, they have how many wins? 8 or 9, probably.
so.
And
I agree.
And then you're going to add talent to that in the offseason.
But Stafford's nearing the end of his career, so yes, I think if we get Stafford, we're probably a 8 to 10 win team, and then maybe you have one more year, and then you're just back to where you are.
No, you got to draft that quarterback this year in the first or second round.
Right.
Let him watch.
Draft his back.
And
You have to go
then it's
all
the
in
same-
on a culture change.
But then you're same there with now you're hoping that the second round pick is going to be.
You're going to give him the best possible spot. I feel like you said, Jayden Daniels, lightning in a bottle. Most of the time, it looks more like Drake May. Like, hey, he's sort of good. He shows something, but they still stink. And that might go on for 2 to 4 years.
Mhm.
That's most of the time. And I think Shador and Cam fall into that category more than Jayden Daniels.
And one other aspect about the Matt Stafford thing is you have a coach in Brian Daboll who, you like, but how sure are you that he's your coach? You have weapons like Wandale, Tyrone Tracy, guys that you might like. If you get a quarterback in here, it gives you a chance to also assess, what your team is rather than throwing a rookie right into the fire. And now, okay, let's say you draft Shador, you have no other contingency plans. He goes out and wins 6 games. Brian Dable gets fired, and a rookie quarterback has to go through the same thing with a new regime and a reset and everything. Stafford at the minimum is, what you're getting with Stafford, which I think there's some value to that.
It's just
I
old.
just don't know how far that can. I feel like it's just trapping yourself in a 2-year box, kind of where it's like, yeah, you'll probably be better and you'll improve and you'll at least become relevant. But then in 2 years, you're gonna be banking on a whatever the second round pick happens to be. But more than likely, that could just cause the same struggles that a new rookie quarterback would, but just without the upside. So I just feel like it's just such a lateral movement, even though it would make us short term better, I think.
Yeah, I just look at it as like an anchor. I get what you're saying. If you get the right guy and it turns around, we're all sitting here next year like praise Cam Ward or Shador, right?
Right.
But if he could, it's a hot mess in New York, and everybody's job needs to be saved. And a quarterback like that could be an anchor that holds together everything while we find the right guy. But
So looking at some other potential options, because I think we can all agree, even if it's not Stafford, there should be a vet quarterback in the room with whatever rookie you're taking. So looking at some of the other options, Dill, we can go to you.
All right.
Do you have any of these guys stick out to you as someone you'd be interested in free agency?
No.
Are you saying as a starting quarterback, or you're saying we draft the number 1 pick and then we get the Justin Fields, Russell Wilson situation?
I'll go by some of the quarterbacks available on the market. If we break it down, at least to me, what I think. Russ,
Nope.
I don't think that's not the right fit. Fields, I do like, but what's the point? He's still young. I feel like I don't think we're the right fit for Fields either. I don't think he'd actually develop well.
I don't know about that. Doesn't he kind of remind you of Daniel Jones, but better? Like he can run, he can throw. I mean, think of what he got out of Jones. I'm just saying, if he was there, I think Dable would maximize Fields pretty good. I've thought that for a couple years.
Maybe.
He's also not someone that's going to be guaranteed a starting job anywhere. So
I like him the most out of the available quarterbacks. Then you look.
But they had a chance on him last year and didn't take him.
No way.
okay, so if you don't like any of the quarterbacks, what exactly is your plan? Just take a rookie and have him be the only guy in the room?
I think you have to take a rookie. I would take a bridge quarterback. That is what I take. I like Kirk Cousins the most out of the bridge quarterbacks just because I think he's been around for a while. I think he could be a good mentor. And I do think he could have 1 year left in him if you're to take a guy. Personally, I would take a bridge quarterback. I'd draft a rookie, and I would do that plan.
So what are we saying here? Who wants to draft a quarterback with the number 3 pick, and who wants to draft Stafford?
I think we all
That's
want
Stafford.
Jayden.
I think we all want to draft a quarterback.
I'd love to
number
have
3
Arch
pick.
Manning, but I don't think he's going to declare for another 2 years.
You think we're in a situation to take Stafford, and then we're going to take a number 3 pick like Shador or Cam?
Probably
That
not.
seems
I mean, it's probably
difficult.
more likely to take a later round quarterback, but I don't think they should hold back from it. If they're your guy, like if you look at one of those guys and say, okay, I really,
If they
I
are, then
love
I don't
Cam
think
Ward.
they'd spend the money. I don't think they're going after Stafford if they think one of those guys is their guy.
Yes and no. Probably not. You're right. Most likely not. And most likely if they get Stafford, they'll take a project quarterback to sit behind him. But if you're thinking about it from Shane's standpoint, whose job's on the line, if you can kind of do the best of both and say, okay, we could have a Pat Mahomes situation where we have a guy
Oh yeah.
sitting for a year, Jordan Love, um, Aaron
But
Rodgers.
the diff
They did it with Kurt Warner and Eli. Like
the diff the
having
diff
a your guy sitting behind a proven vet, there is value to that, especially
I
if your job's on the line.
the
I
difference there.
agree, but the number 3 pick is high.
It is. It is.
I also
Same
feel the
here.
difference with those scenarios is that the quarterback drafted was coming into to a veteran quarterback that's already there. Rarely does a team draft a quarterback, then also in that same year go out and get one. You look at Rodgers, he was already there. Jordan
Falcons
Love
did it last
comes
year.
in.
That was a shocker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That was an
No, I
interesting
think
one.
that was
Yeah.
a bad move.
it was.
No, it's a
Clearly.
valid point,
Yeah.
and chances are it's one lane or the other. So yeah, I mean, where does everybody stand? I think it's Dill, Jay, Jason. They want to draft at 3. Um, I could go either way. Paul, do you have a way you're leaning?
Yeah, the old man view. I want Stafford, and I want another quarterback out of this draft and a real good one. But
I don't think
I
that's
actually think
realistic.
of both scenarios, Stafford would have the better long-term results for the Giants
For what, 2 years?
with a quarterback.
I just don't see how you get both.
I get you. But it's out there for some reason. They hired his brother-in-law for some reason. They're thinking about it for some reason.
Maybe the
There's a lot
quarterback.
of
I think
smoke.
if you're looking at the Giants, ultimately, I do understand. Yes, you have to build a culture. You have to be competitive, but
He's a Hall of Fame quarterback,
the
and he's
ultimate
not done.
goal of any team is to win a Super Bowl. And I think the best way you do that is by drafting the quarterback you believe is your guy and building pieces around him.
That is true,
But I
but
think
you could also make the argument that and I'm for drafting a quarterback at 3, by the way, but I also like the idea of getting Stafford. You could also make the argument that if you miss, you're better off missing by trading a third and a second for Stafford as opposed to taking a quarterback at 3 overall and missing. I'd argue you're more set back by taking a quarterback 3 overall if you miss
I also
than
don't
you are with Stafford.
partially the reason I'm so in on taking a quarterback at 3 is I don't think that either of these quarterbacks available are really going to have this huge fallout bust. I'm not saying they're going to be great, but I think that they'll still be on a winning level, maybe not to the level Stafford would be, but I don't think it would blow up on our face in a horrible way. So that's why I think that there is a higher floor than other lottery picks in years past.
I
I guess
guess
another argument to bring up is, do we think that Mara actually wants to take a quarterback? Because part of me feels like he doesn't. I don't know.
I think
Part of me feels like he wants Arch. Like he just wants, like he's gonna keep
no,
kicking.
they won't.
I want that arch thing to die. Not Arch. I want the arch to
All
the
right.
Giants. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I really
Um,
don't
Threat to
because
Arch Manning.
That's like just throwing away more and more years.
it is.
There's
And
no,
if
there's
you're
nothing. And you know what? As much as I don't really trust Shane and Dable personality sometimes grades me, I really, really trust him as a quarterback. When you saw him he knew Jayden Daniels was it. He was frothing at the mouth for him last year. Couldn't get him.
We're talking a little bit about prospects now, and if it's all good with you guys, I'd like to talk about the two huge prospects that we're all looking at number 3 and where everyone is standing.
yeah,
Yeah, Kyle
let's get into
McCord,
it.
Jackson
So
Dart.
it's Cam Ward and it's Shador Sanders. They're two guys that there had early on in the draft process didn't really seem to be a consensus on who was number 1. As we're getting closer, it seems more and more Cam Ward has been listed by more scouts as the number 1, but it's still very divisive. So I know some of us feel very strongly about some of these guys. So uh, who wants to start?
I'll start with sort of a neutral take before I think we get to the passionate ones. I'm going with I'm going to lean towards Shador, but I think I can be wavered over either way, honestly. I do think Cam Ward has more potential talent, and I think his story kind of reminds me of like Josh Allen in many ways. But I do think Shador has proven that he can be capable and great composure under, he had a horrible offensive line at Colorado. So.
I think that's the point that I want to build off. I'm all in on Shador over Cam Ward, and a lot of my reasoning is he's played at Jackson State, and yeah, primetime was a huge part. Deion Sanders was a huge part in bringing in a lot of prospects and changing these college organizations. So they did it with Jackson State, and then they brought him to Colorado, who was ranked this year, huge for that team, and he was behind a terrible offensive line. And he had one good receiver, and that sounds to me exactly like the New
Oh,
York
he'll
Giants.
feel right at home with the
Good
Giants,
offensive
yeah.
line, and then a great wide receiver. Shador is used to pressure coming at him. He needs to get the ball out quick, and he's pretty poised, and he makes pretty good plays a lot of the times in those moments. Whereas Cam Ward, he kind of just takes 2 steps back, stands straight up, nonchalant in the pocket, and has enough time to make a sandwich while he's sitting there before he throws the ball. I think Shador is more ready for the Giants specifically than Cam Ward. Like
So you're
just
saying,
tailoring it
wait,
specifically to
hang
the
on.
Giants.
You're saying he's more ready for the Giants because the Giants are basically horrible? Is that
I
what
think
you're
Cam Ward is
trying
going to
say?
get rocked if he stands behind the Giants offensive line.
Yeah,
That's
that offensive
Okay.
line isn't nearly as bad as it was 2 years ago. That
It's
offensive
not
line is
in.
a top half of the league offensive line now.
Here's the thing.
It is.
The thing about the Cam Ward thing, people see a few plays where Cam Ward drops back, stands, and doesn't even have to move. And he has had a few plays like that. But it's a lazy take to say that he can't move because his tape is full of plays where he makes insane play throws on the run. He breaks, his
You-
pocket awareness, his pocket presence is actually one of his best traits and his
That's what
ability to escape
what you
sacks
need.
and
Joe
make
Burrow.
big throws.
We also can't be oblivious to the fact that his offensive line's incredible. He has the most time to throw out of any college quarterback in Division I football.
I actually looked that up, and he had less time to throw than Shador did.
That's not true.
Graded by PFF. Graded by PFF.
Dude,
I'll pull it up right now.
Cam Ward had 4.6 seconds in the pocket, and it was more than any other quarterback in Division I football this year.
Okay, where are you getting 4.6?
Let's pull up the tape.
Pull up the tape. Okay, PFF. Here we go. Time to throw. Cam Ward 2.93. Shador 3 seconds.
Where are you getting 2.93?
Yeah, 2.93 seconds to throw. Now, look, Shador played behind an offensive line, a brutal offensive line. There's no arguing that. But time to throw also takes into account, some of those are RPOs designed to get the play out quick. But let's not act like Cam Ward, all he can do is sit and stand still.
I want to see. I just need to go back to this because I need to see what I'm looking at is he had 3.6 seconds and it was the second highest in the country in 2025.
Where are you seeing that? I'm looking at on Pro Football Focus listed all the quarterbacks from this past season.
I'm looking at CBS News.
I'm going to go with Pro Football Focus over CBS News, but
I don't
I mean,
know.
they're both reliable sources.
okay, either way.
What's your eyes tell you, right? It told us that definitely Shador was running for his life most of the time.
Yeah,
Cam
I
had
would
the
say
privilege
it's
of
an
sitting in the
eye test.
pocket a little bit more, but both of them are top 5 picks for a reason. You know what I mean? They're good players. But then you say top 5 but really a lot of them are ranked 16th and 17th overall.
Yeah, but I mean, are we really gonna?
Yes. That means they're not necessarily, according to those who do this for a living, franchise-changing quarterbacks.
I would have to agree that if this was and I love Shador and I think Shador and Cam Ward are both good prospects, but if this was last year's draft or other year's drafts, they're middle of the pack first round picks. They're not lottery picks at all.
I haven't seen enough of either of them. It's hard for me to speak about that. I saw the highlights, but they got the arm strength. They can throw the 15 and out. They can hit Malik on a slant. That's all they need to do. Wandale, have pocket presence. Don't get shaken. Make some plays with your feet when you have to, and listen to Coach Dable. That's what they got to do.
Ultimately, I'll be happy with either. I do like Shador. I'm not anti-Shador. I'm so sold on
Here's
Cam
the thing
Ward.
with that, though. Prime time. He said he was going to control where he goes, just like the Mannings controlled, but the Mannings did it very publicly. And Dion said, I won't do it publicly. And he hasn't. That's
He
why
is
he
doing it
won the
publicly.
cleats.
Shador's in the
That's
street
why he
throwing the
threw the
ball
football
to
with
fake neighbors.
Malik. And now what's he doing? All of a sudden, Shador only uses the Browns when he plays Madden, right? So that's another Dion steer towards where he's going to put him. Maybe he heard Giants aren't going to take him, so let me steer him towards the Browns. But
Oh,
I don't think the Giants want the Dion circus.
Jason.
It's a valid point. It's interesting. This is the season of smoke screens where every team is trying to throw everyone else off. We
I
saw it
get
last year with the Giants and McCarthy and all the
Dable
smoke
has spent a
screens.
lot of time with him, though, right? How much time has he spent with Shador and how much time has he spent with Ward? Have you guys seen? I know he's been out there with them.
from what I've seen, I've seen a lot of reports that he is every time he's at a pro camp, he's looking at Shador and spending a lot of time with Shador because the narrative for a while has been Shador wearing New York Giants
Yes.
game cleats in his last college
Oh, yeah.
football game.
I did see all that too.
Neighbors. It seems like we're geared more towards Shador, but it seems like scouts are saying we should take Ward. I feel like that's what I'm hearing.
How much of that is because Ward is less likely to be available to them at 3?
That's the other part of this conversation. I don't know who is Tennessee going to take a quarterback,
I don't
I
know.
don't think so. I think
It's anybody's
there's
guess.
holes on that team.
and is
What I've
Cleveland.
heard.
I think Cleveland is. I think they
Yeah.
need to. So you're looking at a possible situation where 2 quarterbacks go off the board first, or somebody tries to trade up to the 1. That's not out of the realm.
In that situation, I think you just take Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter.
And then I retire as a Giants fan. We're not doing that.
I want an edge rusher. Give me the Carter guy.
Yeah, I would.
Travis Hunter would be
go
a
Carter at 3. So we could sit here all night and probably argue Ward versus Shador, but I think we can agree that either one would be a good thing for the Giants and give us someone at quarterback that we could get excited about. And they both bring different traits, which is nice. Cam Ward has the arm talent that people rave about. He's got the big time playmaking ability. Shador has the decision making, the accuracy, the things that should translate.
Yeah.
But as we look beyond to the other aspects of the draft, Paul, I know you had mentioned that you had a draft plan. What are some things you'd be looking at beyond the number 3 pick for the Giants and what they should prioritize?
When we talk about positions of need, I look at the trenches, right? And we just watched the Super Bowl demolition. Why did that happen? It happened for the offensive and defensive lines of the Philadelphia Eagles. We've already got a few foundational pieces. We literally have 2 all pros, one on each side of the line, 2 all pros. Add to that. So I heard this is a pretty good, deep draft for edge rushers and a lot of different things. I would put a lot of investment into both sides of that ball and use free agency to go after skill positions.
Yeah, I agree with that. This supposedly is one of the deeper D tackle drafts too. I forget who it was, said that last year he graded 12 guys that had a starting grade at D tackle, and this year there are 24. So it's a lot of depth there, and I agree. That's what I would be looking at with second pick, and then beyond that, probably cornerback and maybe trying to find a receiver out there to pair with whoever you're putting at quarterback. Are there any specific names of guys that interest you past the first round?
From a quarterback position,
Just in general.
in general, I'd have to look a little more.
Yeah. One guy I love, he's probably going first round, but Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, D tackle. He seems like another Jalen Carter type, but I think there's a lot of those types of guys in this draft. Any interest? Oh, Paul, you had mentioned with Stafford some interest in the other quarterbacks. you want to talk for a second about Dart or Milrow or whoever, which of those
If they
quarterbacks
came out
appeals
of
to you?
this, if they came out of this season with Jackson Dart to sit for 2 years behind Matthew Stafford, I would be running through the streets happy.
I don't like Jackson.
I do. I do. Here's my
What's the
thing about
motivation? Break it
quarterbacks,
down. Why
though.
do you like Jackson Dart? Because I don't get it.
Anthony, what did you say a couple weeks ago? You summed it up perfectly about Jackson Dart. Like, what's not to like? His size, can throw the bomb, presence. There's
That
just
sounds exactly like Drew Lock. I think you're going to look at Drew Lock 2.0 in our offense. That's what it sounds like to me.
so
Hey,
if we
he
take a
looked good in the
quarterback, let me
Colts
just
game.
backtrack for a second.
Why
We-
don't you like him?
Because
Yeah.
to me, it looks like Drew Lock. That's
Why?
what has every quality you just described. I mean, yeah, if you put it on paper one way, it looks like a great quarterback, but you can put it on paper another. And I think what you're looking at is Drew Lock, a big quarterback with a big arm who makes gutsy plays. Maybe that'll be ruining the Giants season like 38, whatever, that we blew out the Colts, and then he looks normal again the next game. I think that's what you're going to get with Jackson Dart. I
Maybe
don't think
so.
it's going to be
I talked earlier about trusting Dable with quarterbacks, and that is how I feel. So if Cam and Shador were on the board, whoever we take is the one I would want because I do believe Dable's making that call. I think last year, if he could have made the call, it would have been Daniels, and then it was May, and he was right about that. And I think this year, if he took Ward, that means we're going to do the best with Ward. And if he takes Sanders, it's because he sees something. And so if he takes Jackson Dart later, somewhere, somehow, over Milrow or whatever, that's because he's going to know he's got the skills that he can develop. So I do have a lot of trust in Dable over what I see.
I actually don't. I kind of did a 180 on Milrow. I wouldn't mind Milrow as much as I thought I would, only because he reminds me a lot of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Just in play style, I think he's a solid game manager. He's just another guy I think that I wouldn't hate if we had him sitting behind. I would prefer him to Dart personally.
Yeah.
Just one more point about Jackson Dart. One of the reasons I don't like him. Everybody laughing.
Gotta get him on the show.
He just looks to me like I didn't watch a ton of Ole Miss games, so I'm only going off of a couple games that I saw, but it looked to me like he made one read and then he either threw that read or he ran.
That is the biggest question mark, I think,
That's
when
the
it comes to
Giants'
Jackson
offense.
Dart.
I don't know why he'll fit right
He
in.
ran Lane Kiffin's offense. It was very RPO based, very RPO heavy. And can that translate? And to me, that's the only question that I have about his game because everything else I think is there. From purely arm talent, size, strength, toughness, mobility, everything else is there. The question is, can he read the defense and function in NFL offense, which is a valid question. And why to me he doesn't, he's in a separate tier well below, below the other guys. What were you saying, Jayden?
I was saying that's where I think trust in your GM comes in, or Dable if you want to let him pick, just because that's the hardest thing I think when looking at college quarterbacks is there's so much college offense that is so unrealistic in NFL standards that it works great even for really high quality teams, but it's just never going to happen in the pro level. So it's really hard to kind of pick and choose who you like. That's why personally I wouldn't hate Milrow. I think he's seen a lot of competition. Being on Alabama, he wasn't great this year by any means, but that's why I would not hate grabbing someone like him.
NFL.com scouting report, and they're not fully robust yet, but on Jackson Dart, 3-year SEC starter who constantly improved, stocky build, average physical attributes, but good makeup and intangibles. He's fairly accurate and rarely overcomplicates things for himself. Teams might see physical and play similarities between Dart and Brock Purdy. So that's kind of their comp that they're giving him, and they got different strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, talk about his deep ball and things like that as being something good. But obviously, he'd be a project, which is why I wouldn't want him to play for 2 years behind Matthew Stafford. But
he seems like the type of guy too that could be, if he's in the right situation, could thrive. Maybe he's not the type of guy that can go in and be a franchise savior, but if you get him, like you said, sitting behind someone like Stafford, that could be super valuable.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the draft needs, targets, anything like that before we move on? No.
I think we got to get closer and start reading all the, the Ringer always has a good draft profile of all the players and things like that. I think about a month out, we know every player in college
Yep.
football,
Yep.
right? We just know the big ones.
Yeah, maybe as it gets closer, we can do an NFL draft episode, just full preview. Actually, when does the combine start? Is it next week?
Come in Indianapolis. Yeah, it's out
Yeah.
in. Yep.
So as we move on to the next aspect of the Giants offseason that we want to look at is free agency. There was a rise in the cap. I saw today the Giants could have around 50 mil in cap space. So how far does that get you? Positions of need, any specific targets jump out to you guys?
Just a couple guys that I like. I do love Aziz. I don't think we're going to re-sign him, but I think he's going to look like a star in another defense where he's healthy. But a guy that I like where there's a lot of drama that follows him is Hassan Reddick, same position. If we lose Aziz and Hassan is cheap enough, I'd like to get him. And as far as wide receivers go, I'm a huge T. Higgins guy, but realistically, we're not going to pay for him. So I'd say Chris Godwin.
Imagine though, T. Higgins, Malik Neighbors, Wandale Robinson in the slot. Stafford dropping back and feeding to them. Tell me what that might look like. 30 points a game. When's the last time we saw that?
That'd be crazy. I think Patriots are probably going to get T. Higgins. Patriots have an insane amount of cap space. I forget what it was, but like absurd. Commanders are another team with a ton of cap space. But Jay, you mentioned Chris Godwin, who I love as a potential target coming off an injury. Maybe that lowers his price tag a little bit, but big guy, can play in the slot, can play outside. Good guy to have alongside Malik Neighbors. Big ticket.
Charvarius Ward's a guy I'm looking at cornerback. I'd like to see put some. You can't have enough cornerbacks in this league when they're running four wide all the time. And I think if we're going to have one big ticket guy, that's who I'd want. Or bring over DJ Reed from the other side of town.
And definitely a much more minor move this offseason, and not to get back into the whole quarterback debate, but I think Jameis Winston would actually be a pretty good fit if we take Shedeur Cam Ward.
I'd like him too as a locker room guy, bench guy. Dill, you had something you were saying?
I like Asante Samuel Jr. I think ultimately there's still a lot of gaps, particularly I still feel like the offensive line, there isn't enough time. And I think the secondary is really weak. So I would say those are probably your main positions of focus.
Yeah, you can't get enough O-linemen.
And speaking of which, my big ticket guy that I don't know how realistic it is to sign him, but the guy I would want if we were going big on anyone is Trey Smith. He's a guard for the Chiefs. He's a player that there was some talk about him getting franchised, but looks like he's going to hit the open market, and he probably shouldn't. And man, Shane, if you're going to spend big on anybody, spend on Trey Smith, and then you can have a line of
Chiefs wouldn't pay him,
Yeah, I mean think about they paid big money to what's his name? Tooney.
Their line just got destroyed, right? So
yeah, I mean they have two big money offensive linemen and they have no tackles. So they got to go out and get a tackle, and Giants just happen to have their biggest hole on the offensive line is at guard, where Trey Smith is. And, if you could put out Thomas, Runyon, Schmitz is kind of mid, but, Illuminor and Trey Smith, that's a much improved unit. And, to your point, Paul, that you mentioned earlier about building the trenches, how much better does the rest of your team look with an offensive line and a defensive line? The offensive skill players, the defensive skill players, they're all looking better if you can build up those trenches.
I wonder if there's I see the center list there. Some of these guys, Drew Dahlman, Ryan Kelly. I wonder, if you go spend money on a center and then you move Schmitz over to a guard, which he used to play before, or just make him a backup, which he kind of is, could really bolster the line too,
Yeah. Are we going to see Evan Neal at guard? I feel like
I don't know.
Eric Flowers was that?
I thought Eric Flowers was the worst, and then he reclaimed himself to at least be a middling guard in the league. Who's the guy that went up from the Jets to Mekhi Becton?
Becton, yeah.
Dominant, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know why they wouldn't have done it already, though. I think they know what – I got to trust they know what they're doing. Like everybody in the world's like, put the guy at guard. He can't do tackle, and they haven't done it. So why?
Do they know what they're doing?
It seems like he's got an ego problem. There was a quote on him last year where he was chirping at fans saying, "You're flipping cheeseburgers and watching me," pretty much. Like he doesn't seem like a guy who's willing to change his position.
I guess, Dylan, do they know what they're doing? Maybe not, but you know what? I mean, there's so many people sitting in a room. We're sitting in a room right now brainstorming, but I mean, these are people being paid six figures to sit around and look at this guy, and all of them are saying, "Can we move him the guard? Can we move him the guard?" And they never did. Why? Right? I don't know. 3 years letting him languish out there and tackle.
Yeah. There any I feel like what separates, you look at a team like the Eagles, Howie Roseman, obviously they dominate the draft. Somehow they draft absolute studs every single year. But they also go out in free agency and sign under the radar guys that turn into stars. James Bradbury had been coming off a down season with the Giants. They signed him. He goes over there and he's awesome again. Zach Bond was a nobody on the Saints, turned him into an all pro. And, so Shane has an opportunity with all this cap space to go out and try to find somebody like that, like who's that guy that can come in and just defy expectations for us.
It's got to be a very interesting time to be the Giants brain trust. There's a lot of options out there.
Definitely. They can go a lot of different ways, and
It's not hopeless. They got to stop, get rid of the negativity and be hopeful. Be like, this is what we can do. Let's believe it. Let's do it. Look, we got money. We got foundational pieces. No more of this. Oh, what are we going to do with the Commanders in our division? The Eagles doesn't matter. Just be positive, man. Get that pride back.
I do think the major change needs to come in the culture.
What's that?
Coming what?
There needs to be a massive culture change, because
do you think that's best from bringing in a Stafford, or do you think that's best from drafting a rookie quarterback?
It would be nice to make the playoffs, but I honestly do even think a culture change is a team that goes 7-10, but is competitive in every game.
Mm-hmm.
I think even just making progress every year would be.
I thought that's what we did 3 years ago.
The biggest the biggest benefit for me with signing Stafford would be that the worst thing that could happen for us is to draft a quarterback and have it just go awful again and then just take the wind right out of our sails. So getting Stafford would at least give us a floor that we don't really have right now. Maybe like a 6-7 win floor, but with the potential of being, 8, 9, 10 wins and making the playoffs. So I do see the benefit. I just don't love putting our faith in the hands of a second round quarterback pick. But
what do you guys think is going to happen? Like, we could talk, but what do you think is going to happen?
I think they're going to draft a quarterback.
Yeah.
I change what I think every day with this.
It's something, isn't it?
I really do. I was convinced that they were going to take Shador, whether that was trading up for him or what.
I felt that way at the time too.
Then I was convinced that they were going to get Stafford. I really don't know. I could see it going multiple ways. It's hard to predict.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, my prediction is that the Browns take Shador 2 and the Giants take Cam Ward 3.
One thing we didn't talk about with the draft that I wanted to ask you guys was the potential of trading up. So obviously, because of Drew Lock, our savior, we miss out on the number 1 overall pick. Do you feel a level of confidence, circling back to these quarterbacks, but in Shador for you guys or for Cam Ward, that you'd be willing to trade up to number 1? Or do you only want him if he falls to us?
I don't think it's worth it.
I mean, I said it earlier. If these quarterbacks were in a different draft, I think they're middle of the pack. So I wouldn't feel super confident trading up to number 1 for either of these guys, even though, I do like both of them. I don't think either of them are sure things enough to make it worth trading up to 1. I think we kind of let the cards fall where they may and take the best quarterback available.
I agree. I think it's a valid point. I think if that point, it's nice. The one nice thing about it 3 is, worst case scenario, you're either getting one of your quarterbacks, or if they're both off the board, Abdul Carter falls to you and you get a great edge rusher who could be the next Michael Parsons.
Is there any way that we walk away with no quarterback at all?
Yeah.
Stafford included?
Yeah.
I don't
I'd be
think so.
stunned.
I
I'd
think
be
you sign a
stunned.
bridge guy.
I don't think so
if
either.
I think if you
I think
strike
we'll.
out
You're
and
saying no quarterback at all? We don't
I'm
draft.
saying is there any chance we don't draft a quarterback and we also don't go out and get Stafford?
No,
Okay,
no.
I agree.
What are they gonna? Who's left? Danny,
Yeah.
Tommy DeVito.
Drew Luck.
Yeah, I think even if they go Stafford, or if Stafford's too much and they go another bridge quarterback, Tyler Shuck, if it's Dylan Gabriel, they'll get somebody at least
Oh,
in the later
Shane.
rounds.
Oh,
I see Joe Shane's going to pull a Sonny Weaver from draft day, and he's going to write down Vontae Mack that morning, and it's going to be Vontae Mack
No matter what.
no matter what.
Yeah.
So who's Shane's no matter what?
Abdul Carter.
Nope. Nope. The answer
Could be.
is Dylan Gabriel.
Hey, as a 6th round pick, if they don't get a
Iguodala.
quarterback,
Hmm.
I think that just about wraps it up. And unless you guys have any other thoughts or points you wanted to discuss, any interest in Aaron Rodgers?
Not at all.
guy needs
I'll be
to
interested to
retire.
see where he goes, though. I don't think he's done yet. Minnesota's intriguing. Follow
Yeah.
the playbook.
I've seen some people say the Rams
I
if
can't
they
wait for
trade
Jordan
Stafford.
Love
I've heard
on the
that too.
Jets in 10 years.
Heard that too.
What's Dylan saying?
I said I can't wait for Jordan Love on the Jets in 10 years.
That'd be something.
Yeah, right. Imagine that.
All right, so we have a intriguing few weeks and months that come up. It'll be interesting to see what happens. For anything that you could say about the Giants offseason, one thing that you can't say is that it's going to be boring. There'll be a lot going on. So hopefully when we do this pod next year, we're talking about a much better future and, a Super Bowl team coming on the horizon.
Talking about coming out of the Final Four, right? The NFC Championship.
Yeah. Yeah. We find our Jayden Daniels
Yep.
and we move forward.
Yep.
But all right, guys, thanks for hopping on. To anyone who's listening, feel free to subscribe, find us wherever you get your podcasts, and look forward to hopping on and talking again with you soon. But until then, this has been The Final Score.